Delicious, we are in the zone of the delicious recap. We are recapping our favorite sitcom from the 90s, Family Matters. I promise you I will not cough. I'm Jon Francois Andrew, Ajay Vandertunt. Is there anybody that you're going to be this week?
I am Claudia Scheinbaum today.
That's an awesome name. Who is that?
She is the president of Mexico and has now won my vote for Mexico America.
What does she do?
So she's the president of Mexico, and earlier this week, she had a press conference and she pulled out a map from 1607 that shows almost all of North America is under the control of Mexico. And she just proposed that back to our future president, who wants to rename the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. And she's like, well, we can just call all of your land Mexico America. And I kind of support it. So I am Claudia Scheinbaum. And she always responds, so I just like her.
I love that. Claudia, go you for clapping back. That would be considered clapping back, right?
It is, and it's the cutest clapback video. If you watch it, you're going to love
it. I love that. A reminder for those of you who would like to get early access to our episode recaps and interviews, you could do so by subscribing to our Patreon, patreon.com/deliciousrecap, just $5 a month. Patreon.com/deliciousrecap. We would love to have you on. We are recapping season 2, episode 17, High Hopes. Original air date, February 1st, 1991. They must have had a hiatus because the last episode we recapped was on January 18th. Fred Fox and Dennis Snee wrote this episode. Gary Mentier, once again, directs this episode. I think he's like, and maybe we've already talked about this before, but I think he's like second place in terms of like prolifically directing a lot of Family Matters episodes, along with Rich Correll, being in first place. Guest stars, oh my God, we got Barry Jenner coming back, the late great Barry Jenner, I should say, coming back as Lieutenant Murtaugh. Man, I am so in love with it. I just, and this is his second time coming back, right?
This is his third time. Has he won you over, John?
Oh, you know what? You're right, because he did appear in Dog Day Halloween. So I think the order was Dog Day Halloween, Boxcar Blues, and then this episode, or was it Boxcar Blues, Dog Day Halloween, and then this episode?
Boxcar, Halloween, and then this episode.
Okay. All right. I think, yep, that seems to make sense. He's just my favorite. Him and Urkel carried this episode. That's just my opinion. Jim Dugan is Jimmy. He identifies on IMDb as just Jimmy, but if I remember correctly, his long-ass name was, I can't remember. Do you remember what the name was?
No, I don't.
Jimmy Wild Blue Yonder Phillips?
Is that the balloon operator?
Yeah, the hot balloon instructor. So we have two guys in this episode with ridiculously long names that involve some kind of quirky middle name nickname. The radio guy that we don't see but we hear from the radio contest that Harriette and Rachel won, Johnny, too talented to be on the radio, Hawkins. The hot balloon instructor is Jimmy Wild Blue Yonder Phillips. So clearly Fred Fox and Dennis Snee were just like, let's make a little inside joke.
I love that. I did not pick up on their names at all. So that is amazing.
Yeah. And, speaking of that off-screen voice of Johnny Hawkins, he's not even credited, but I will shout him out because he just made me chuckle a little bit with his delivery. Myself being a former radio personality. Our Hulu summary, Steve finds an unorthodox way to cure Carl of his fear of heights. And meanwhile, Rachel and Harriette argue over who won a car in a radio contest. For those of you that are going to be wondering why we are identifying things by food, it's very simple. We will identify what we like and didn't like in this episode by appetizer, junk food, main course, dessert, just like you would enjoy a meal, literally. That's how we're going to define this episode. That's all you need to know.
I like it.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're good to go. We start with a cold open. What did you think, man? I mean, we start with Carl I feel like this is like the third or fourth time he's coming in just angry, but this time he's stepping it up. He's coming in angry. His police uniform is all like dirty and ripped up. He's like putting the bag on the floor, his work bag. He has a big tantrum. What did you think about this moment as we find out why exactly he comes in all dirty and ripped up and just out of it?
I I don't feel like Carl's reaction when he walks in matches the energy for the story.
Huh?
Because the way he came in, I thought he was upset at a person, not upset at his reaction to being scared of heights.
That, you know what, that I thought that too. I thought like, oh shit, like a very bad criminal like got away and Carl is angry because he was like so close but he couldn't catch him. But yeah, you're right. I mean, him just being so frustrated about the fear of heights that led him to not catch the criminal. Yeah, it was it was different for me.
I If it were me, I would expect crying or like a shameful like I would feel shame if I was like, oh, I'm so upset about this. I thought he was gonna like walk in and be like, Harriet, I was about to capture this guy, and then he punched me in the face or something.
And that would have made sense. So Rachel and Harriet, they understandably they're looking at Carl like, wait, whoa, what the fuck happened? Why are your clothes all ripped up? Why are you angry, throwing a bag on the floor? What's going on? And I think this is the second time that Harriet doesn't understand Carl's logical anger. Like, if you remember from the Crash Course episode, where Harriet was just like, Carl, calm down. What's going on? And it's like, Harriet, Carl is losing his mind, understandably, because Eddie drove a car through the living room. And then this time, Harriet, her first question is, Carl, why are you so upset? And I'm like, wait a minute. If I'm Harriet, I'm coming in, I'm seeing Carl, his clothes are all roughed up, he's all dirtied about the face. My first question would not be, why are you so upset? My first question would be, Carl, what the fuck happened to you?
I wrote in my notes, this is Tyler Perry writing. Because I had the same question, like, why are you gonna look at him beat up and be like, what's wrong with you? As opposed to, are you okay? Like,
Yeah.
you are battered and bruised. What?
Yeah, yeah. So Tyler Perry really writes like that with his characters?
John, yes. Watch anything Tyler Perry, and it is the same thing.
Oh my
They
God.
do just that.
That was so funny. So Carl then explains that he was chasing some purse stealing punk across the roof of the Sears Tower. That lets you know how long ago this episode was, when Sears was a thing. And that once I think he got to the edge of the rooftop, Carl mentioned that he like started getting shaky, dizzy, ready, and that confirms that he does have acrophobia, the fear of heights. Two things I was wondering. I wanted to get your thoughts on this. How at the time I was wondering, how did Carl's clothes get that dirty and ripped up from just chasing after somebody? And two, Microsoft Bing kind of answered this question for me. I was wondering if it was a good idea to have a police officer who's scared of heights. The internet says yes. They say it's okay for a police officer to be scared of heights. Fear can be a healthy motivator, and being used to being feared may be an advantage for law enforcement officers. You having your experience with 911 call centering, what are your thoughts? I mean, would you feel comfortable having a police officer out there on the field who is afraid of heights?
Yeah, I would, because I mean, that's a hard one to gauge. Like, how would you know somebody else is legitimately afraid of this and test for it? But I think everybody would be at some point. There's a height that you're going to be afraid of because your body knows that that's going to kill you. But I don't think I would ever be like, you're a bad cop if you're afraid of heights, because there's that point where you kind of have to triage the situation, and as a cop, I can't do anything to save this person without other agencies here. So yeah, there can be fear. Fear can be the motivator, but I think it's just human. You're just going to be human in that job no matter what.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, because I don't know. I was relating it to the example of like a long time ago when I was in college and looking for a summer job. I remember they were looking. It was one of those like summer camp things where they were looking for like someone to like instruct people on how to like ride through a zip line. And I was like, hey, I need to make money. Sure. Like, I'll audition or interview for this by trying this out myself. And then my fear of heights kicked in, and I was just like, ooh, maybe that's not a good fit for me. So I don't know. I was wondering, with police officers sometimes having to do those wild chases with the criminals who just want to go through rooftops and get away, like, maybe overcoming a fear of heights is important to the job. But I don't know. Maybe it's different for every person. It depends on what city you're in or something like that. So who the fuck knows?
And honestly, I would take a scared cop who's scared of heights because they would logically think about this. Because I'm thinking about this now. How important was this course that you had to chase somebody to the top of the building? And then on top of that, he has to come down at some point. So just have somebody stationed at all of the exits. You're going to catch him no matter what.
Right. And also, shoplifting. Can you imagine a scenario today where a police officer would like really chase after somebody on foot for shoplifting?
No, they've got too many Black people to harass for crossing the street.
We got time for this.
Right.
Oh God. Harriette, once again, Harriette scores points on the fashion. She was like wearing this like dressy light brown top, black skirt, stockings, heels. As she was sitting on the couch with Rachel, she was kind of looking very secretarial. She had this folder with papers that was opened, and she was, it looked like she was like in the middle of work while she was asking her husband why he was so upset.
I think she brought work home with her. Except for one moment in this episode, she looks like she has come home from work at every point.
What does she do for work?
I'm still trying to figure out if she's head of security because I am very confused.
Okay, because we haven't really referenced what Harriette does for work pretty much since the second episode of the first season. Oh, big question. My appetizer came in here. Poor Carl, he made me laugh here. When Rachel was asking if he caught the criminal, Carl was all pouty. He was just like, no, he got away when I started to cry. And I know that we shouldn't like be, I'm afraid of heights. So yes, let's not make fun of people's fears. I know it's not funny, but I don't know, just the thought of like this police officer just like chasing after this purse stealing punk and then looking at the edge of the rooftop and then just tears start falling from his eyes as the punk just goes away. I was just amused.
I mean, I would have to laugh too. I have a fear of heights myself, so I get it. Like, all you can do is just cry. Because that's what I would do. I would just cry, like, I can't do it. I'm going back downstairs.
I guess you'll have that purse. Harriette was asking Carl how he got down from the rooftop, and I was like, all right, so he must have like just went inside the building and went down the stairs. But then Carl just like made it better when his pouty self was like, I crawled down the stairs on my hands and knees. And then I was wondering, like, okay, are these stairs outside the building? Are they inside the building? Because, I mean, Carl couldn't stand up and shake and use his legs like a normal scared person. I don't know. What were you thinking? I mean, they might have been inside the building, right? The stairs?
Possibly, but I'm thinking of buildings here, and I had this experience where I went all the way up to the rooftop of a building. It's about a 13-story apartment building that's near me. And I was barbecuing with friends up there. We hung out all day. And I would not move out of this one spot of the roof because whenever I stood up, it felt like everything was moving. And I went to go look over the sides. And when we left, I crawled to the stairs. Oh. I felt so uneasy standing up that I literally crawled to the stairs and went down. And it went from like outside to inside the building. But I can see the reason of being terrified like that.
Oh my God. Were you like Carl and you, like as you were crawling, you fell down the last 60 part of the stairs? Because that's what he admitted. He was just like, oh, you know, I crawled like for the first part of the 100, but then the last 60, I just slipped and fell, which I think explains his dirty and ripped up outfit. I think that's why he's dirty and ripped up is because he slipped and fell on 60 fucking stairs.
Yes. Oh man, door dashing. There's one building I had to DoorDash here to. The person was on the 18th floor. I took the elevator up and it shot up there so fast I almost shit on myself. And I was terrified. I decided, I was like, oh, let me take the stairs all the way back down. By the time I got to about like 16 flights down, my knees felt like they were going to give out. I felt exactly how Carl looked. It was crazy.
God. Wow. Damn. I mean, my door dashing injuries, it's stupid because I could easily solve it. It's because I have like fucked up laces on my snow boots. So I've had instances twice where on the way to either doing a grocery shopping order or dropping off someone's food, I just do a hard trip onto the parking lot and, scrape my knees, scrape my palms a little bit. And then,
no,
I know, and then proceed to just still have the fucked up laces on the snow boots. But that's okay, because my wife did get me new ones, and I will have to put them on. I'll have to put them on at some point. It's very hard because I'm a serial procrastinator. I will get them on at some point.
When you do it, it'll be a benefit. One little tip to anybody who's listening, who's a DoorDash driver: during the winter, I wear knee pads because I fall all the time.
Yeah.
So I got myself a pair of knee pads, and they definitely help with the falls.
I would imagine, especially being in the Northeast. I mean, right now we're, having quite a bit of snow up here in Vermont. And I know you had mentioned having some cold and snow, and there in Rochester, New York. There are people that do not take care of their driveways. So you got to be prepared to fall and not get paid extra for it.
They will look at you like, is my food here? I don't care that you just fell. Is my food here?
I don't know. I don't care that you're practically injured and killed yourself to bring me my chicken Kiev, as Steve would say. Is my food here?
This was a good cold opening. I did like this one.
Yes. We go into scene. I'm sorry. Cold open. I think did I say it was scene 1?
You did, but we're going into scene 1, so it works.
Okay. This is practice scene 1. Let's go into official scene 1 in the kitchen. Mama Winslow, she's baking God knows what. Harriette, Rachel, they're entering to talk about Carl's fear of heights. And I'm noticing Rachel's pretty dressed too. She has like, what do you call that hat that Rachel's wearing? It has like a very 60s Audrey Hepburn kind of vibe. Is there a name to that hat?
I don't know what it's called, and I should have looked it up because I was like, oh, it's super cute. That hat, her whole outfit this episode worked, but that hat was just like a focal point.
Yeah. And did Harriette and Rachel decide we're sisters and we're going to wear black stockings and heels today? Because I think they're both wearing black stockings and black heels.
They are both wearing black stockings and black heels. It's like they came from church or they're going to work at a church.
Yeah. Mama Winslow is a horny dog, and I love her. If you remember when Rachel was flabbergasted by Carl's like fear of heights symptoms, the dizziness, the freezing up, not being able to breathe, and then Mama Winslow was like, "Oh, what's wrong with that? That's the same way I react whenever I see Denzel Washington." And yeah, go ahead.
Mama Winslow loves her man.
She does, and I just it made me think about the scope of like Denzel with I don't know, the audience. Because now he's got that more like elder statesman vibe. But if you remember, I think every other 90s show, especially black shows that I was seeing back in the day, there was always a reference of a female just going head over heels for Denzel Washington. Because he was a young, handsome man on the rise back in the 90s. I mean, he had fucking Glory and Malcolm X and Mo Better Blues, like all those movies. Everybody was obsessed with Denzel.
Everybody was, and he's still fine.
What?
Gladiator, oh my God. In Gladiator, I was like, Daddy Denzel.
Yeah, you know what? Yes. I totally forgot Gladiator 2. I still have to see that movie just for him. And I really want to see Denzel in person on Broadway. He's doing a Shakespeare Othello from Shakespeare with Jake Gyllenhaal. I really want to see that. But yes, Gladiator 2. I've heard so many good things about his performance. And Denzel was like a big reason why I got into acting back in the day. So I got to see that movie.
You'll love it. It is very good. I've watched it 4 times now because I love Gladiator, and this is a great scene.
Yes. Now we get into our B story where we've established that Harriette and Rachel are participating in this radio contest. What are your thoughts about this scene?
So the B story scene, I love. This was actually a memory that came back into my head watching this because I fell in love with the car that they win. So Harriette and Rachel are in the kitchen. Harriette does something that I love, but Rachel does something that I hate. Harriette's on the phone and she's telling Rachel to turn on the radio, and Rachel asks why. I'm like, don't do that. Just turn on the radio.
What's going on? What's like? Turn on the radio. Just do it. I mean, there's something back in the day. Like if there's a phone call that your sister is taking and she's like, turn on the radio, that usually means something good is happening. That usually means you can win something. So. So Harriette answers the phone call that's coming in, and she's receiving a random unsolicited call from some guy named Johnny, too talented to be on the radio Hawkins, to answer a blast from the past artist question for a chance to win your favorite car, bright red shiny new red Cabriolet, which I believe is a Volkswagen, right?
It's Volkswagen convertible. Is the cutest car ever.
Okay, I have to look at that. Now, do they have a non-convertible version of that car, or is it... Okay, I could swear my mom had a blue version of that car back in the day. So I think she had a blue Cabriolet. I think.
Mm-hmm. It's a great car.
It is? Okay.
It is. And people still drive them today. There are people who have ones from the 90s. Those cabriolets last forever.
Sounds like a wine, by the way, cabriolet.
Ooh, like a little fancy wine. Like, I have a little cabriolet.
So can we discuss the unsolicited call? I think in 2025, it hits different when some random person calls your house and says, hey, you have the chance to win a red, bright, shiny new cabriolet. Just answer this question. Like, I feel like today it would be like, this is a scam.
You know what the question would be? Is your car warranties up to date? That would be the question. So we would just hang up the phone and miss out on a free car.
Yeah, like who's this fucking person who just, I guess, got my number randomly from a phone book, because it's not like Harriette was asking for her house to be called. Number 2, love the bitter humor that's kind of laced within Johnny Hawkins' nickname, because like the middle name is Too Talented to Be on the Radio. So clearly this is if you worked in the radio industry like I did, Andrew, you would get this. Radio is known for not paying well and sort of seen as like this lower end scum of the earth side of entertainment compared to like television and movies. Whereas radio could be like seen as like blue collar working class, television and movies is like the elite, like white collar, like upper level, like, hey, stars, Hollywood carpet, things like that. So I think Johnny undertoned the fact that like, hey, I'm Mr. Radio Personality, but I'm too good for this, so I'm going to kind of sneak in and let you know that.
I always imagine the opposite for radio. I wouldn't see it as like, oh, we're the blue collar section, the actors. I always thought radio people were like, I'm just too good for you and I have my own show.
No, radio is so deceiving because by voice, it could seem like this very like stargazing etiquette, like very fanciful entertainment thing. But walk into any radio station, the guy that's going to be like, he's going to smell like ass. He's going to have sweats on. He's probably going to be in his 60s or older because there's just a lot of old people in radio now. He's going to have a bad breath. He's going to be bitter about like not getting a raise in like 10 or 15 years, not having health insurance. Trust me, I had your opinion about radio when I got into it, and then I found out like, oh God, everybody's miserable here. Oh God. Anyway, so number 3, third point on the Johnny Hawkins is, oh no, never mind. The third point I already made. It was all about the cabriolet being a Volkswagen and my mom having a blue version. Did you notice a very fake stock studio audience applause when Harriette correctly guessed the mystery oldie song, and turns out she won the bright shiny new red cabriolet? It didn't sound like a live reaction studio applause. It sounded like a very like, oh, here's a recording from 2 years ago studio applause sound.
It did. It sounded very canned. I thought it was supposed to be a reaction on the radio playing. That's how like bad it sounded. Until I realized it was supposed to be the studio clapping in the captions.
Right. Yeah. Oh, Family Matters. They just think that we're a Friday night sitcom. We're not Friends. We're not the Full House. We could get away with this sketchy shit. Johnny Too Talented to Be on the Radio Hawkins. I have to know that he would so get Me Too'd today. Remember that comment that he slipped in at the end when, he's like, oh, hey, let's arrange a time for you to pick up the car. And if you're a looker, we'll go for a ride.
Like very pervy.
And Harriette, unfortunately, like a woman of her day, was just like, oh, okay, I'll just move past that and not acknowledge it. That's all you could do sometimes. Did you love Harriette's animated celebratory dance after she won the contest?
No, I did not.
Oh no! Why did you not like it? Why did you not like her being like, I want a car, I want a car, I want a car? Like she was just shaking her head in her fists.
I loved the fact that she put so much into it. But if we were going to add clapping or audio or audience participation, that was the point to do it. It was so weird because nobody was reacting.
It was just Harriette on her own. And I mean, Rachel obviously wasn't reacting because she's like, no, bitch, I won the car. Mama Winslow, I think, was quietly smiling, I think. But Harriette, it was just in her own corner near the kitchen table, like she was like doing like this fist pumping and it sounded like it was like to the tune of like a Macho Man song, like that kind of thing. She was just very much in her own celebratory world, and I was all about it. But hey, it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody.
It was a moment. It did remind me of Elaine dancing from Seinfeld. I was like, oh, this is funny in that aspect, but it just felt so weird for a moment.
When like Elaine from Seinfeld, when she could not dance, and then you saw her awkwardly try to dance by herself in the bedroom. Yeah, I know that moment.
Very iconic moment. Harriet walked so Elaine could run with that dance. That's what happened.
Yep. As always, black people putting the precursor on white people's success. This episode came out like what? I mean, Seinfeld was just popping around this time. It was just coming out, but I think that Elaine episode was like much later down in the road in Seinfeld's run. So we've already established that Rachel is just not happy at Harriet celebrating because she thinks that she won the car because she was the one that gave Harriet the correct answer to the question. Mama Winslow, I love it. She's just kind of like, uh-oh, because she senses like, here's that sibling rivalry that I'm very, very well familiar with.
She was ready. She's like, I know what the kids are about to do. I do have to say, I am personally on Harriet's side here. Harriet was in the right. Rachel was not in the right at all.
Let's give me a reasoning for that, because I actually am on Rachel's side.
They called Harriet. If Rachel wanted the car, she should have had a house. She should have had her own phone line. She should have been in the White Pages phone book that they opened up. Harriet is the person they called. She won.
But as Rachel said, Harriet, you didn't know diddly squat until I gave you the answer. I think that yes, Rachel should have her own fucking house. That's well established. Yes, it was Harriet who got called, but the person who came up with the right answer to the question, I think, deserves a reward. So if it was like, put a gun to my head, who deserves the car, Harriet or Rachel, I would choose Rachel for that reason. Rachel put in the work and Harriet just put the answer on the phone. But seeing that these sisters are clearly at a tussle, I would suggest that they share the car. That might be crazy because I know that, look, I mean, I like to own my own car. I don't like to share my car, but, it clearly looks like they're going to have a hard time coming to an agreement. So I would say y'all live in the same house enough as it is. Maybe have it be like a weekend car that you share. Like, oh, Rachel takes the car on Saturday, Harriet takes the car on Sunday. That would be my suggestion. But what do you think?
I thought of that too, because I was playing the scenario out in my head. I'm like, okay, they share the car because I still feel like Harriet should have the car, but Rachel did supply the answer. But then, the other voice in my head came through and said, Andrew, they called Harriet. They did not call Rachel. And my mindset on it is like when you go buy something at the store, let's say there's one of the items left that you pick out and you're at the register to pay for it because the person behind you has the money out faster. Should they be able to take it from you? You still had the same opportunity. And if I fumble the bag, okay, then it's done. But just because you shouted it and then I said it does not make you the rightful winner. Because they did not call you.
All right. I mean, look, I don't know. I mean, it's debatable. Can we consider Harriet to have cheated because she didn't come up with the answer herself? Someone else gave her the answer. I don't know. I mean,
true, but Rachel would have never been involved if Harriet didn't tell her to turn on the radio. You never would have known what was happening if I didn't alert you about my situation.
Yeah. Yes. If the radio wasn't turned on, a car wouldn't have been one in the first place. Okay. All right. I see your argument. It's an interesting thing. I mean, and that's something that I feel like if we put this up on social media, it could be a divisive thing. It could be like, hey, Harriet told Rachel to turn on the radio. Harriet answered the phone at her house. And then other people might be like, well, Rachel was the one that thought of the answer. So we'll see what the consensus of that is. I mean, Rachel and Harriet, they're at each other's throats. Rachel is telling Harriet that she'll allow her to use the car if she's paid. And then Harriet, she has like this amusing gritted teeth response of like, Rachel, I'm trying to be nice here. And then Rachel responding with, so am I. So Mama Winslow is trying her best to be the peacemaker, and then Harriet and Rachel just are like, "Butt out, Grandma!" at the same time. And yeah, Mama Winslow was just shockingly, she was just like, she was like a pouty weakling who was just walking away, conceding that she wouldn't win this fight. And I was like, no, that's not in your character. I feel like you would have been more forceful, and like she does that at the end of the episode, but I think like she could have done that right now too.
I feel like she totally could have done that right there in that moment, and we could have got a different play out to the end of the episode.
Yeah.
I did like that she was kind of like, I'm just going to sit back. I'm going to let these girls handle it. Let me not get involved yet. But when she does, I'm happy she does. She eats them up.
We go into the living room for scene 2. This is where we build up our A story of what the fuck Carl is going to do about his fear of heights. My goodness gracious. I'm very concerned about Officer Winslow being out there on the beat because he is scared on this small step ladder that Eddie is holding for him, by the way. Have you ever heard of a situation where you have had to climb on a step ladder, a small step ladder, and someone had to hold it for you? I think Carl could have been fine on that step ladder without Eddie assisting like that.
Yes. Now this would eliminate you as a candidate for me for a police officer if I saw you do that. Like, up the step ladder, no, we can't have you on the force.
It was insane. I mean, Carl, like, he was scared out of his mind on this step ladder that was like maybe a foot or less from the ground in the living room. And I think at one point he was tense and had his arms all stretched out. He had his eyes closed. I was like, what situation where are you going to have your arms all stretched out and eyes closed and you're trying to catch a criminal? Like, you need to see the person that you're catching. And yeah. So very concerning to say the least. Also concerning, were you bothered by Eddie's hair? It seemed like he had a terrible haircut from Supercuts. Like it just seemed like it was like this awkward shave, and then he had the curly hair with it, and then a piece of hair was sticking out from the back. It just didn't look good.
He used a texturizer kit, and it did not look good in his hair. I don't know who helped him style it, or maybe he left the texturizer in that long, where that one piece was just overly straightened. It looked bad.
Darius's hairdresser was on vacation that week.
He was like, I'll do it myself.
Yeah, and then Darius realized, oh, I'm a teenager. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. All right. So Eddie gets distracted by a phone call from Jolene. He goes to the kitchen, and that leaves Carl in the living room by himself, standing alone and with his tiny stepladder, scared for his life. And the view that we get of Carl looking down into the ground, you would think that this stepladder was like 10,000 feet from the living room ground. Like I said, it's maybe like less than a foot away, but man, Carl makes it seem like it's worse.
He does. And shout out to the cameraman. They actually made it look like he was really high when they did that focus thing with the lens.
Yeah.
Because I was sitting there, I was like, oh my God, okay, that kind of looks a little weird to look at on television.
Yeah. I mean, Carl is just like, he's dizzy. He's like, oh my God. Like, and then we have Steve Urkel coming in, wondering what the hell is going on with Carl. And he has studio audience applause, but again, it sounds fake. It doesn't sound like a live reaction. It sounds like a pre-recorded stock mess. Like, what the fuck is going on?
It sounds really bad, but this kind of leads into the next episode. But I feel like this episode, they were like, okay, we've got Urkel in the car now. Now we're going to rev the engine in this episode, because next episode, we're going over our first hill. And that's what I feel like was happening with the audience reaction. They were trying to test, like, when should we have Urkel come out? When should we have clapping? And because the audience reactions are off for a lot of this episode for me.
Yeah, they are not consistent, and I'm actually wondering if it's like just a recording of audience sounds rather than an actual live studio audience. Maybe for some reason they couldn't get a live studio audience for a lot of this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? We'll have to look into it. So Carl gets so startled by Steve that he screams and falls backward off of his stepladder. That's like less than a foot tall from the ground. And then he ends up crushing Steve on the couch when the ladder wasn't even pointed toward that direction. So that's a continuity thing I'm trying to figure out. I don't know if you noticed that as well.
I did. I was wondering, because there's no shot of him turning around. He just is in front of Steve as he's falling.
Yeah. Dessert, Steve made me laugh so fucking hard when Carl got off of him, and then you see Steve all like fucking contorted and deformed, like he was just smushed by the biggest of big guys you could ever imagine. Yeah, and he was. I mean, he's a wee little kid, and then Carl is like this portly adult man, and Steve could have had his bones broken, for God's sake.
That was hilarious. The look on his horror on Steve's face on the couch was hilarious.
Yeah, and I don't know if you have a passion for Little Debbie snacks, but I was with Steve when Carl was asking if he's okay, and then Steve's just like, I think so. I wish I didn't put that ding dong in my pocket.
I don't like Little Debbie snacks, but I wanted a ding dong after hearing that.
Yeah, and I don't blame you, Little Debbie. You have to be in a right frame of mind and maybe a certain kind of age to put up with that artificial sugar mess. Mm-hmm. So for a kid like Steve, it's the biggest dream I imagine. I love the creepy, intrusive way that Steve tries to get Carl to share his fear of heights. There was one moment where he was just like, "Come on, Carl, it's me, Steve, share." It was great.
It was. His poking and prodding was perfect in this episode.
Yeah. Like there was just a specific way he was like pushing his body delicately toward Carl, like after it's me, Steve, and Cher. Jaleel like had some specific comedic beats there that were really great. I really love that. And this was the first time that I found out that acrophobia meant heights. I did not know that there was a term like that given to fear of heights. I just thought that acrophobia was like fear of spiders or something, but that is what?
That is arachnophobia, which I suffer from.
You and my dear wife, Tony. Yes. I so badly sometimes want to make spider jokes, but she will basically kill me every time I do. She just does not laugh. And if there's anything I don't like, it's the awkwardness of wanting to make my wife laugh. And then she just gives me a serious, like, that wasn't funny. That wasn't funny. Like, it just hurts my pride and my ego so much. I just hate that shit. It's like, I want to make you laugh. I don't want to make you, like, bummed out.
You're doing the good work. You were thinking of the comedic outcome of this.
Yeah. Get married someday, Andrew. You'll find that sometimes you just will never make your spouse laugh, and you just be like, why did you hurt me so badly?
If my spouse brings a spider in the house, you deserve to feel that way.
Understandable. So Steve tries to reassure Carl by admitting that he has gymnophobia, which, maybe a dumbass thing. I thought Steve is a nerd. Maybe he's just afraid of gyms. No, it's not that. He's afraid of nudity.
Which I didn't know was a real fear, but is a real fear.
I had to look it up myself. Microsoft Bing confirms gymnophobia. It does mean a fear of nudity. And you can leave it to Steve to talk about how he conquered his gymnophobia, the strangest, creepiest way to do it. So Carl asks how he overcame it. Steve says he snuck into an amusement park, went into the Hall of Mirrors, ripped his clothes off, and forced himself to look at himself naked in the mirror in 150 different angles. You shook your head. How did you feel about that revelation?
All I thought of was the movie Us. That's all I thought about. And then on the other side, I'm like, whoa, that had to look so weird.
Yeah. I mean, I had questions. I was like, how did you get access to the park this late at night after hours? Like, did you just sneak in there by yourself as an unsupervised kid? Did Herb and Diane go with you and say, yeah, sure, why not? Let the kid do whatever he wants? Like, I don't know. Maybe he lives near the park and he did that walk himself. I don't know. I question why Urkel does the things he does.
It leads to a lot of questions, because now that you mention it, I'm like, did Herb and Diane know he was going to go do this? And when he got there, was anybody else there?
I don't know.
There are a lot of unanswered questions on how this child broke into a park to do this.
God. Well, Steve is definitely not the person Carl should be listening to for conquering the fear of heights. We definitely know that throughout this episode. And especially now, because Steve is just like, hey, big guy, how about we go bungee jumping? And I would challenge Steve to try to get Carl even in the car to go to the bungee jumping. I mean, let's see if he gets up in the air. I think with fear of heights, speaking personally, and I think you might agree with this as well, baby steps. Baby steps. We don't need to go from 0 to 10 million. I don't know if that works all the time.
I would want to agree, but I can't because I went parasailing. I'm terrified of heights, and then I was suspended over the ocean in a parachute hundreds of feet in the air. Bungee jumping, I would go do it if I had the chance.
Wait a minute. So how are you afraid of heights, but you have the courage to do things like that? Like what?
I don't know. I guess I know that I'm going to die instantly, so it's not as scary.
So I wonder if it, when you do stuff like that, does it positively affect your fear of heights? Does it make it like more toned down, or is it about the same level?
It's about the same level. I haven't noticed a change. I do think it actually is for me. How fast will I die from this height? Am I going to suffer? And at that point, parasailing, I was like, if I go down, there's no saving me. The same thing with bungee jumping. It's like, okay, it's over. Falling from like a standing height, like say I'm on top of a building, I'm like, ooh, I may break my legs or my spine and I may not go.
So I think you're a good example of not letting fear dictate your actions, because it's very easy to do that. Like I've certainly, like me and my wife Tony were both afraid of heights, and we're both just like, fuck no, whenever we hear about people who like skydive, before they get engaged or some stupid shit like that. Things like that, I'll let fear dictate my actions. But I think there are sometimes like what you're doing with what you've done with, what would you say, paradiving and bungee jumping and stuff like that?
Parasailing and bungee jumping.
Parasailing and bungee jumping. I also think that if you're scared of something, underneath that is sort of a curiosity to breathe through it, because that could also mean there's a source of adrenaline there, because like, think about it. A lot of the times we have a routine in life. We walk through day by day, relatively unchallenged, paying our bills, whatever. And sometimes we just observe these experiences that are like so unlike our ordinary world that we're like, holy God. I mean, we could very well be just like, oh my God, this is like going to scare the shit out of me. But underneath that, we're like, this is going to scare the shit out of me. So maybe I should find a way to work through that and breathe through that, because out of that can come a very interesting new adventure that I could talk to my grandchildren about like 57 years later. So I think you're tackling it the right way.
Yeah, I mean, you never know when you're going to get the chance to do it again, but I'm not doing it when it comes going to a spider museum or something like that. My fear is going to win. My fear will not allow me to go.
Yeah, you have exceptions. I understand that. Carl is refuting Steve's suggestion and says he should take it slow. And Steve is giving me some great anti-vax energy with this line. Well, Carl, if you want to listen to some medical guy who's telling you to take it slow, okay, you could listen to some medical guy with a fucking degree, or you could listen to me, this kid with barely enough life experience.
Oh my God, I feel like that's going to be the information we hear for the next 4 years. That's my last political thing.
It's okay.
But it's
okay.
That's what we're going to hear.
Yeah. It's okay. Hi, Sherman from Texas. Should I get vaccinated? Well, you could listen to me and not do it, or you could listen to some medical guy.
Have you just considered getting infected? Then you don't have to worry about catching it.
Hey, let Mother Nature take its course. Get infected and just keep doing what you're doing, and then it'll just go away. Fart it out, burp it out. It'll go away soon.
But people used to have parties to give their children chicken. Go out and get sick. You'll be fine.
Because it's like, what is that? Herd immunity? Is that what the fucking thing is? Is that the concept of it?
That is the concept. Herd immunity is the concept in exposure therapy. But I mean, we're just going to do it. We're going to see what happens. And it works for some people and some people it doesn't.
I love that. We have some great subtle physical comedy as the doorbell rings, because Carl is walking toward the door to answer, and then he looks back at Steve to wonder why he's following him. And then Steve looks behind his own shoulder, and it's just like, huh? Yeah, big guy? What are you looking at? Like, it's a very quick moment, but it's just so great. I love that small choice.
It's subtle, but it's good. Carl and Steve together, their energy is so good. And you can just see the relationship building with them.
Now, can we discuss our favorite man, Lieutenant Murtaugh? Go ahead. Like anything from his and you know what? Keep in mind, it's hard to. I mean, it like he doesn't appear for a long time in this scene, but he does so much with the little that he's given. I loved it.
He does. When he comes in and Steve references his dog, it is his deadpan response when Steve is like, "Oh, I'm sorry your dog died," or he's responding to him saying that your dog died. And he's like, that doesn't help bring him back. It is the best moment. I just screamed.
It's definitely, I think I did put it as my dessert. It was, first of all, I'm glad that they mentioned the Boxcar Blues episode because that's what I was like thinking all along because, Lieutenant Murtaugh, he comes in the door. Of course, he greets Carl with this stoic, manly Winslow. And then Steve with Kid. And the moment he greeted Steve with Kid, I was like, does he remember that he interacted with Steve in the Boxcar Blues episode when he was showing pictures of his dog to Steve and Steve eventually got into the policeman program? And then literally as I was thinking of that, it happened, as you mentioned. I mean, the interaction between Steve and Murtaugh is just priceless. I mean, Murtaugh seems startled as Steve walks toward him and says something like, "Hey, haven't we met before?" And then Steve references the moment where he got the pictures of the dog from Murtaugh. And Murtaugh just had this very deadpan mourning face saying, he's dead. My dog is dead. And then Steve says he's sorry to hear that. And then Murtaugh is just like, yeah, sure, that'll bring him back. And then Steve just doesn't know what to make of that snide comment. And then he whispers to Carl behind him. He says, "Oh, they actually give this guy bullets?"
Murtaugh's response is my response. Whenever something bad happens and someone says, "Oh, I'm sorry," I'm like, that doesn't help. It doesn't help, but it's so good to see somebody do it too.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely doesn't help, but to defend that person, I would say, sometimes it's like the best form of sympathy you can give. It's like, oh my God, this is so awful, and I don't know how to react to it. So all I can say is, I'm so sorry you're going through that because I wouldn't want to go through that as well. So I don't know.
Everybody's different. For me, I just don't need it at the time. It's the timing. If you want to tell me you're sorry a month later, I appreciate it. In the moment when I'm experiencing it, you don't have to say you're sorry because you didn't do anything.
Yeah. It's kind of the equivalent of when, like I told you, I got a flat tire door dashing the other night, and just someone out of nowhere coming up to me and being like, "Whoo, that looks bad." And I'm like, really? Like that? No, just get the fuck away. If you're not here to solve the problem, get the fuck away. That looks like
I understand that. Oh my God.
that looks like a doozy. What are you gonna do about that? I'm like, okay, I'm gonna punch you in the face. That's what I'm gonna do. Get away from me as I try to solve this flat tire.
They'll look at you like you're crazy if you're like, "No, this is how I want my tire to be." So it's terrible. But as a kind person, I'm sure you feel it. You're just like, "Yeah, it's bad." And it's like, "Fuck you, get away from me."
It's funny. So another dessert here. Carl asking Murtaugh a simple fucking question: "What brings you to this neck of the woods?" And Murtaugh just makes a hilarious meal out of his answer. He's just staring into the distance very stoically, like he's delivering this intense monologue. And remember this rhyming scheme that he was doing? "Winslow, I've always thought of you as a cop's cop, a top cop, a no holds barred, non-stop cop."
He's amazing. He's amazing.
It was great. I wish Barry was alive. I really wanted to interview him. Why did you have to die, Barry?
Yes, because there's so much gold you gave us.
And Murtaugh, of all people, he introduced me to a word that I've never heard before. After complimenting Carl, he hits him in the gut with, okay. So I think Murtaugh's thing was like, "Winslow, I love you. I commend you. You're a great officer, which is why it surprised me that you are a panty waist." Have you heard the word panty waist before?
Ironically, yes. One other time from a podcast that I love, one of the co-hosts says panty waist, and we didn't know what it was. And he literally on the podcast Googled it with his co-host and like, "Oh, that's what panty waist means." I've been meaning to say that to people.
That's like one of 4 different words that Family Matters uses to describe cowardly in this episode. So that's what it means, panty waist. I mean, it sounds like a name that you would use in some kind of Shakespearean play back in whatever. I feel like it goes up there with like, hey, we're instead of the middle finger, I'm gonna bite my thumb at you, like that kind of thing.
Spit at people's feet.
Yeah, yeah. It just seems like one of those old timey insults that just doesn't hold up. But I don't know. If you said you heard it on a podcast, what's the podcast that you heard it from?
So on The Read, The Read is the name of the podcast, and panty waist I thought was like dirty underwear or something. So I was like, okay, I guess this kind of works, but I need to hear somebody else use it in a sentence so I understand the full spectrum of this word.
Yeah. God, you're such a panty waist for not loving spiders.
Ugh.
Yeah. But I agree with you. It just seems like, oh, like panties are great and you're wasting them. Like it seems like it would be in that literal definition, but nip, panty waist means cowardly. Murtaugh had a line, the hot topic in the officer's steam room is that you're afraid of heights, Winslow. And I guess I'm new to the world. I didn't know that police officers had steam rooms, but I guess it makes sense given the difficulty of the job that they're in. You need to have a space where you can relax, meditate, take care of yourself before you risk your life out there.
Yeah, I can see why they would have it. Do you find steam rooms relaxing? I don't find it to be relaxing.
I don't think I think I've only been to a steam room once or twice, and I've either been by myself or maybe with like someone else in there. I never could understand the concept of like 25 guys in a steam room just sweaty with their nakedness and their towels and
I can see why.
oh, I mean, yeah, I mean, for me, it's less so about the sexuality of it all. I think it's just, I define relaxation as like as private and as quiet as possible. And just the idea of, I mean, really regardless of gender, just like a bunch of people, here we are naked and sweaty with towels in a room. And maybe there's like awkward conversation, or maybe I'm just seeing Jim across from me sweat. I just don't know if that's relaxing to me. I feel like I would need a more intimate or more less people-y experience to be relaxed in a steam room.
Yeah, I don't find sweating relaxing. If I'm sweating, I don't see how I could be relaxed. And I just feel like I need to take a shower at that point. Like, I don't like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're certainly burning calories, but I do get what you're saying because you're hot. Like you get like you just feel like you're about to die. All right, so Murtaugh is revealing that Sergeant Charles Carnelli was the one who outed Carl's fear of heights to the police officer's gossip area. And if you remember from the Flash Pants episode, Carnelli was the one who competed with Carl in that policeman charities dance contest, the one who got injured with Carl at the last minute.
But he's still being a terrible one-upper to Carl.
Yeah. And I think my favorite thing about exaggerated macho manliness, maybe you could call it toxic masculinity or whatever, the contradicting / ironic homoeroticism that can come from it. Like when Murtaugh was claiming that, he told Carnelli that like he defended Carl as not a wimp, and then he smartly snapped him with his towel. And then if you just catch that look that Murtaugh gives into the distance, I snapped him with a towel. And then he just holds on to that look. Like, it's the best thing ever to snap Carnelli with the towel. I don't know. He gave such a suggestive grin. And it just reminds me of how amusing I find like some guys who are so prideful in their macho manliness, their macho straightness. And then sometimes they like exhibit behavior and they're probably not aware of it, where it's like, okay, you claim to be sort of like this like macho homophobic thing, but then it's like, no, you think there's a little bit of a little bit of a thing there.
It is very interesting to me how very macho men are the gayest men I have ever met in my life.
Really?
It's like y'all are just gay. You just need to admit it. It is okay to touch your butt. Just let somebody touch it. But it is funny because that's what I imagine. I imagine in straight locker rooms, the guys are just like slapping each other with their towels and stuff for no reason. I just imagine a group of guys in a locker room are just wild.
Yeah. And again, I know, sorry, listener, watcher, we're going to bring this back to politics. It reminds me, remember when Trump went viral? I think this was before the election happened. where was the guy named Arnold Palmer, or like
Yeah.
the dead golf guy, and Trump was just admiring the size of his penis. Like, you go in the locker room with that guy and you take a shower next to him, and boy, did he have something. And it's like, I don't care. Like, whatever, guys can have good penises, that's fine. But it was just like, okay, like, why do we need to know this information?
I could, okay, at the bathhouse, which is gay men at a place where people hook up, I can understand going to my friends, be like, oh my God, did you see him in the locker room?
Yeah.
As a straight person, I'm kind of looking at you like, why were you so enamored with this man's member? Like,
Yeah.
what's happening there?
I mean, and that's the thing among straight men. I mean, there is certainly a degree of admiration and like insecurity mixed all in together when straight men look at other straight men. And if it's like a straight man that like they admire, or they like, oh my God, look, the muscles and the penis on that guy, there is that sort of borderline thing where you just kind of wonder, like, oh, is it like a homoerotic thing? Is it just purely idolatry? Like, you're just looking up and you want to be that guy? Like, I don't know. It's, but yeah, no, Trump was for a second there, he was fixated on the big penis of this dead golfing guy.
Trump was fixated. To all the straight men out there, you are not gay. I'm going to tell you that right now. You are not gay if you're like, oh, he's got a nice piece. Or like, oh my God, he's handsome. You're not gay. You are not. You are only gay until you push back on it. When you push back on it, that makes you gay. Okay? If you're not doing that, you're not gay.
Okay. All right.
Admire men, and men are beautiful. So are women.
Yeah. Men, women, everybody in the world is beautiful in their own way.
Yes, everybody's beautiful. Like, have a little fun.
There you go. All right. So amusing Murtaugh, maybe. I thought it was a good idea to recommend to Carl that he see a police psychologist for his fear. I thought it was very sweet to admit to Carl that he wants to promote him to lieutenant someday. And I did think it was reasonable to tell Carl, like, hey, I mean, I want to promote you to lieutenant, and I don't know if I would feel comfortable having a lieutenant out there that is sweating and puking every time he approaches a rooftop. Because I just related to, like, say, Commissioner Gordon from Batman. Can you imagine if he was too afraid to meet Batman on the rooftop after seeing the bat signal? Like, oh yeah, we could do the bat signal thing, Batman, but can I like do it from my apartment on the first floor instead of the rooftop?
There's a universe in the Batman universe where that actually is a true thing.
Oh, really?
Gordon is afraid of heights. So never meets, yes. So he never meets Batman on the top of the building. Very good. But with this, I was happy that Murtaugh recommended a therapist. That would probably be incredibly rare even today in a police department. The thing that I didn't like, I was like, as somebody who works as an employee that would be unionized in this, don't come to me and tell me you're promised me a promotion when you know you can't do that.
Oh, that's true.
Like, I would feel like you're kind of leading me on there. Like, doesn't seem right.
Well, you know what? Carl knows about Murtaugh and the stripper, so at least he has that to use if he couldn't get the job.
Which that part I loved. Did you think he was threatening Murtaugh?
You know, it came out of nowhere. It definitely came off as blackmail to me. It did. So, and I think it starts with like, well, first of all, I want to say to Carl, like, don't admit to your fear. It's okay. Fear of heights is common. And he brushes it off to Murtaugh as a vicious rumor. But then that's when he follows up with sort of this like passive aggressive blackmail thing where he was like, well, my fear of heights is a vicious rumor, just like it's a vicious rumor about you and the stripper. So, Carl, I think he's very passionate about his career and doesn't want that forfeited, and sees that his boss is vulnerable and that his boss is certainly dumb. And Murtaugh seems to know it, because if you look at his reaction, he's just like, yeah, it's a rumor. Clearly something happened with Murtaugh and the stripper. Now, I want to know what happened with Murtaugh and the stripper. What do you think happened? Was it just the stripper was selling herself illegally on the street and Murtaugh was looking for a little something, and there was a conflict of interest? Like, or was it just like, oh, Murtaugh saw a stripper at a strip club and then had sex with her, which probably fine. I mean, maybe if he was on the clock, there was an issue, but what do you think it might have been?
I think either he hooked up with the stripper in the police station or his office, which would be like an illegal thing to do, or he had a night where he binged on some drugs with this stripper and there's pictures.
Ooh. Murtaugh doing blow with Shoshana Hawkins. What's a good stripper name? Candy Desiree.
I'll go with Candy Desiree.
I don't know. I just figured that Johnny Hawkins from the radio has a stripper relative, and the stripper relative just is out there stripping. You know,
I like it. I like that a lot, actually.
I don't know. I Candy Desiree, Kit Kat Frosting. I would prefer those names for stripper names. No to Kit Kat Frosting.
I kind of like Kit Kat Frosting. I would expect to see her on a Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah. Oh, I gave this name to Tony the other day, but it was unrelated. Lily Lavender.
Oh, Lily? Ooh.
Yeah. I could be a pimp, but the right kind of pimp, not the wrong kind.
You gotta watch P-Valley. Oh my gosh. There's a girl whose name is very close to that, and this would be the perfect name.
All right. I'll check that out. And I love how Steve tells Carl that he can either cry home to mommy or conquer his fear of heights in one day, like it's a crash diet. And then Steve hums the tune from Jeopardy that we all know so well when the contestants are writing down their answers. Carl puts his hand over Steve's mouth to shut him up. And then Carl goes along with Steve's one-day so-called success plan. And then Steve is just like, perfect, I'll pick you up tomorrow morning at 8, big guy. And all you have to do is trust what I say. I was wondering who the fuck is picking up Steve? Steve, who's driving? Like, what you're a kid. How are you getting there?
Right. How are you the one picking Carl up to get to this location? And 2, why is Carl not asking follow-up questions?
Because I think didn't Carl in the cold open say like, oh my God, when I looked over the rooftop, it was frightening. I haven't been that frightened since the day I met Steve Urkel. And now he's trusting this kid who is not legal at all to drive or to drink or whatever to conquer his fear of heights, of all things. So
it seems so backwards.
Yeah. So I really don't have that much sympathy for Carl in this episode because it's like, okay, you're getting what you're deserving because you're trusting Steve Urkel.
The moment Steve Urkel tells you to trust him, you already know, Carl, it's going to turn out bad. Carl did not learn from the past.
We get into our hot balloon adventure, the first part of it at least, for scene 3. Carl is outdoors looking up to the sky in fear, and then the camera pans out to reveal a happy Steve right next to him in this field where they are going to be hot air ballooning. Steve has his Amelia Earhart pilot hat on. Is there a name to that, or can I just call it an Amelia Earhart hat?
I'm going with Amelia Earhart hat. I don't know what to call that thing.
Yeah, and then we see the revelation of the hot air balloon. It comes up in the camera frame, and Carl is, again, just choosing to not trust an adult medical professional and trust Steve Urkel on this endeavor. I do like this set a lot. Oh, you don't like this set?
What? Okay. I was screaming and wrote in my notes. I was like, John is going to hate this set.
No. So the hillside background of this exterior, it did look like a painting for sure. I mean, this was clearly all filmed on a soundstage. This was not on location. But there was something about those trees and bushes that were pretty authentic looking that made up for it. It's not the greatest set, but I like it a hell of a lot better than the ice fishing set from Ice Station Winslow. You thought I was going to hate this set so much.
I thought you would have hated this more than the Ice Station Winslow set.
No, the Ice Station Winslow set was an atrocity and insult to winter wonderland. And I come from Vermont where there's plenty of snow and it just, when you go out to ice fish in a wintry vibe, it doesn't look anything like what I saw in Family Matters. No, I just thought that this set was an improvement just based on the authenticity of the trees and bushes. Everything else I could have done without, but the trees and bushes, I was like, they actually maybe got those from a forest somewhere.
Okay, so I wrote that I hate this set.
Oh, why did you hate the set?
Because on the bottom of the set, they use fabric to imitate the tree and bush pattern to continue on to the background. And you can actually tell that there's a fan blowing something somewhere because the panel of fabric where it's supposed to be the background is moving. It looks like it's like a billowing tablecloth, and it threw me for a loop. If you look down at their feet, you'll see the seam of this like curtain where they've drawn the bushes and leaves on it. And I'm like, what is that? That distracted me this whole scene while they were on the ground.
Yeah, they didn't have quite the budget. Yeah, this is season 2. I mean, the popularity was kind of getting there, but I feel like once we get to like season 3, season 4, season 5, maybe we'll see an improvement in on-location sets on Family Matters. So Steve is making a fearful situation a lot worse. He nonchalantly is just telling Carl, like, hey, this hot air balloon can't go more than 5,000 feet. And then Carl, of course, freaks out at the idea of being that high up in the air. And then Steve's just like, well, you can't go that much farther without losing oxygen. Otherwise, your head will explode. And Carl is just like me. I would have just been like, bye at that moment. But he stays.
I would have been back in the car as soon as I saw the balloon.
Oh.
Like, no, Steve, we're not doing this. If you were not here, maybe. But with you here, we're not doing this.
Yeah, but we're led to believe that an adult is going to be supervising Steve and Carl in this endeavor. Johnny, too talented to be on the radio, Hawkins, now becomes the hot air balloon professional, Jimmy Wild Blue Yonder Phillips. I think we're now coming across the third way or the second way to say no. I think this is like both the second and never. Okay, sorry. You're watching me destroy myself in real time. So I think that Lieutenant Murtaugh referenced Carl as hopefully not being a wimp in the last scene. That's a way to say cowardly. And then we get the third way to say cowardly in this scene where, after Jimmy introduces himself as Jimmy Wild Blue Yonder Phillips, Carl is just like, hey, hi, I'm Carl Ellow Belly Winslow. Ellow Belly. Have you heard that word before?
I have. It's a good old Texas saying.
I've never heard that, and automatically I thought, wow, that sounds like an ethnic slur for some reason.
I feel like that is like a very deeply sticky situation. If you're Yellow Belly, you just sound like a very sticky object.
Yeah. Oh, man. Woo! So Jimmy is clearly putting on a sense of humor in the wrong place for a guy trying to conquer his fear of heights. Jimmy was asking Carl if this is his first time on a hot air balloon. Carl was like, yeah. And then Jimmy was joking that like, oh, yeah, it's my first time too. I don't know if you would be comfortable accepting that joke in that situation if you were terrified like fuck.
No, I'm going to give you the iciest stare in the world at that point.
Yeah. Like, oh, really? You want me to die? Okay. All right. And how did Urkel get this guy? I guess he just has like a hot air balloon connection. He called up the hot air balloon hotline or visited the hot air balloon store and hired somebody, and or he used some of Herb and Diane's get the fuck away from me money and paid for this guy. How did Steve just come up with a hot air balloon guy?
Steve's got a guy for everything. He's got a guy for everything. I bet he met this guy at his allergist office.
I was going to say, he's got an allergy guy. He's got a hot air balloon guy. Yeah, maybe Dr. Wu hooked him up.
Mm.
And why wouldn't he? Because doctors make so much fucking money.
They do, and they just know everybody. They know everything.
Dessert right here. Steve made me fucking laugh when he excitedly gets into the hot air balloon. Jimmy tells Carl to hop in. Carl says he's not getting in with Steve wearing his Amelia Earhart hat. And then Steve just has the saddest puppy dog face as he slowly takes off the hat and he just says quietly, "Party pooper." He convinced me so much. I was almost thinking that the audience was going to awe, but it was like the fact that he went from like this completely convincing sad thing to just party pooper and then audience laughs and you realize it's for comic relief. It was great.
It was good. It was a very, very good moment. And Carl was smart. He was like, okay, I'm going to reduce the antics here. You take that off now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, Jimmy, Wild Blue Yonder Phillips, is it professional to just push Carl into the hot air balloon like he did. You know, Carl was nervously getting into the balloon, trying to figure out if this is a good idea. And then Jimmy just kind of like pushes him to the balloon. And Carl is rightfully like, what the fuck? Now, if someone did that to you, how would you react?
We're fighting.
Yeah.
There's nothing else that we have to do. You assaulted me. No.
Yes. Or, I mean, I would probably like force them into the hot air balloon and then I'd let it take off and then I'd get my Glock and then I'd shoot that hot air balloon and then boom, they're done.
That's called murder. And
not if I shoot at the hot air balloon, not at the person. I'm shooting at the hot air balloon and the hot air balloon just happens to deflate and happens to kill the person. Am I guilty? Maybe.
Legally, no, because you only shot the balloon. Oh.
I can claim that, I was only trying to shoot sports. I was trying to shoot birds in the air so I could have a nice dinner at home tonight.
I was trying to put a piece of metal in the hole in the balloon to seal it.
Oh, my God. I think you could call that secondhand murder, right? Secondhand murder if you shoot the balloon that happens to kill the person.
I think it would be second degree because technically you didn't plan it. It wasn't the goal, but somebody still did die.
Oh, my God. And I'm getting the feeling that Jimmy was not kidding around about his inexperience. That funny moment where he was like, I'll be right back to get my maps. He walks toward the right and then there's a beat and then he comes back into the camera frame and says, oops, wrong way. And then he just goes into the opposite direction. It was great.
Definitely not getting in the balloon. That would be my key. Nope, we're not doing this. Go home.
Yeah. And then we see dumbass Steve. He's just seeing, what do you call that? The lever, the rope? What do we call it?
Whatever that lever is for that blowtorch thing, the blowtorch lever.
The blowtorch lever. I like that. So Steve sees the blowtorch lever. It's pretty much the only fucking thing in the hot air balloon that looks like it would activate something. And then he was just like, gee, I wonder what this thing does. And then he pulls on it. Of course, it raises the hot air balloon up into the air just a little bit. And then it freaks the fuck out of Carl. And then Steve tries to make it better when he says, like, maybe if I just pull it again, it'll just go down. And it does not go down. It just keeps on going up further. And then Carl is so scared and not. Oh, actually, no. I think they rise higher and higher, and then we get to a point where Carl is so scared that the fear in his brain is telling him, I gotta just make a jump out of this hot air balloon. I just gotta leap out, which is not cool for a guy who was too afraid to get off of a step ladder. What makes you think jumping off of a hot air balloon is going to be a better idea?
The moment Steve touched the first time, had I gotten to the point of getting in the balloon, I would have got out.
Yeah.
We would have been done right there. As soon as he touched it, because I would be like, you touched it again, one of us has to get hurt. And then the other side of it, once Carl got to the point where he's like, I'm going to jump out, he should have just jumped. It was not going to kill you. I would have jumped out at that point. Like, nope, we're not doing this.
So there wouldn't have been any part of you that would have tried to figure out like how to get back down in a more safer way. You just would have been like, no, I'm just going to leap to my death.
We got two options. If it continues rising, I'm jumping out and I'm just risking it no matter where I am. I don't care. Or we can stop it and get it back on the ground. Once we get on the ground, I am getting out of the balloon. I'm going to drop you off at home and block you on every single thing so you can never contact me again. Those are the options.
I'm gonna treat you bitter ex-spouse style.
Yes, you are getting ghosted.
There you go. I love that. Steve makes it both funnier and worse when he suggests that pulling the lever once will make the balloon go up and pulling the lever twice will make it go down. That does not work. And then, the hot air balloon just keeps on going up and up to the point where Steve and Carl are just leaving the camera frame. We don't know where the fuck they are. They're just getting farther up into the air. I'm also wondering why it's taking so damn long for Jimmy to come back and get the map. What do you think? He just was dumb, or was this intentional? What was going on there? Where was Jimmy this whole time?
I feel like Jimmy saw his moment to eliminate Urkel, so he no longer is his blimp guy. It just was like, I'm just gonna pretend to go to my car and see what happens.
Yeah. Just like that Leroy's conspiracy from the season 2 premiere.
It was all a setup.
Did Leroy intend to leave Steve and Laura behind unsupervised so the place can burn down and he could get that insurance money so he can retire peacefully?
We found out the secret. Urkel is the secret.
Yeah, the secret sauce indeed. Well, we get stock footage of a hot air balloon that is definitely much larger than the one that we actually see when Steve and Carl are in the camera frame. We just see stock footage of that hot air balloon going way up into the air as upbeat music plays to kind of close us out of this scene and give us that suspense. What's going to happen? How is Steve and Carl? How will they get out of this predicament? Will they just live in the air forever? Will they die up there? Will they jump? We don't know.
This is when Family Matters was starting to push it. Like I said, we're revving up to our first hill that's coming in the next episode. Because this is where I was like, how did we get here? This is a little outlandish for even Family Matters right now.
You're making me jealous right now. I haven't even watched the next episode. You keep talking about the next episode, and I'm like, oh my God, am I bracing for a good one?
When you watch it, John, after listening to the Pod Meets World interview, you're going to look at the episode completely differently.
Oh, okay. Anything else for scene 3?
Scene 3, that is it for me, because I actually like the little stock footage video. I felt like I was watching America's Funniest Videos for a second.
Oh, God. In classic America's Funniest Home Video of Passion, the hot air balloon pops, and then Steve and Carl fall to the ground. They survive, and then Carl lets out a fart. Yeah, America's Funniest Home Videos. That was basically like the precursor to YouTube and TikTok funny shit. We had a network television version of all the funny viral videos that you now see on your YouTubes and your TikToks.
Listen to us, kids. Back in our day, you would win $5,000 if you mailed your VHS cassette tape to America's Funniest Home Videos.
Yeah, now you can just upload to YouTube your dog fucking up on a skateboard, but back then we had to mail it in and hope it was on network TV later that Sunday. And it's hard to believe that show is still on the air with Alfonso Ribeiro, I think, still hosting. Is he still hosting?
Yep, he's still hosted, and it is still just as funny.
Wow, there you go. All right, so we get into the part 2 of our hot air balloon adventure with Steve and Carl, scene 4. So when we get to see Steve and Carl, like the lower part of this hot air balloon nearest them, it had like this circular rectangular fashion to it that, again, looks nothing like the stock footage of the hot air balloon. So maybe we should have better continuity, Family Matters people.
I'm just saying, if you're going to use stock footage and you're going to build a set piece, maybe you should build it like the stock image looks.
Yeah. And this is what Carl deserves. I'm going to reiterate. I mean, you trust Steve Urkel to conquer your fear of heights, and this is what you get. You get a maniacal nerd who obliviously seems to forget about your fear by being like, wow, Carl, you should see the view from up here. It is beautiful. How do you think Carl is going to react, Steve?
Steve is hilarious for thinking that Carl was going to have this positive response. This scene reminds me of what I say to myself sometimes where I'm like, you should have just gone to therapy. Because none of this would have happened if you just went and talked to somebody.
Yeah. Just like you should have gone to therapy a long time ago for that dog that died in your family, Carl, when you were a kid.
Mm-hmm. Carl, there's lots of unpack here.
Yeah. We have a very short scene here. Anything else before we move on to the return of our B story?
No, we're going back into the B story now, because this is actually my main course / dessert scene.
Ooh,
I actually really like how this whole thing sums up.
Okay, cool. So yeah, let's talk about it. Going back into the living room, we got Laura, Mama Winslow, Harriette, and Rachel. Like, what did you like about the resolution of this B story?
I love that we had Laura come in the episode. I think this is our first time seeing her. So it was fun to have Laura there. It was fun to see Harriette and Rachel still arguing about this car. Like, which we never see the car, but they now have the car essentially. So like they're arguing about it. We've got Mama Winslow back, but this time the argument, which I love, was funnier in this moment because we get Mama Winslow interjecting, kind of steering the argument from who gets the car to, no, I don't want this stinky car. And it is the best. It's like siblings all over.
Right. It's great. It's great. Laura is wearing an 80s aerobic exercise outfit. that is not referenced at all in that scene. So that seemed random to me.
Laura's wardrobe is very random because she's in exercise gear, but nothing about her says she just worked out. Her hair is perfect.
Yeah. Harriette, however, wearing a very interesting, what I call chunky blue-greenish V-neck sweater with thick short sleeves that resemble Laura's dress sleeves from the Laura's First Date episode. And then she's got like a white collared shirt that's buttoned up to the top underneath. And then she has a heart-shaped necklace. Is there a definition to this look? Because it was different and it was interesting to me.
So this whole time we've been recording, that image of Harriette wearing that has been on my television, which is directly across from me.
Oh.
And I've been staring at it and I'm like, she looks like a teacher who is going out for drinks and this is her day to night look. Like it's very interesting.
And that's maybe her job that we didn't know until now. Maybe she is a substitute teacher, part-time school teacher. I don't know. That could be it. And then I believe Rachel argues to Harriette that the red car belongs to her because red is her favorite color. And then Harriette says something like, well, that figures. Red brings out your eyes. And I was like, you tell me what was meant by that, because I was like, wait, either Rachel needs to see an eye doctor or she's like high all the time. Like, what does that mean? Red brings out your eyes.
I don't know what Harriette meant about that because I was like, well, it can't be that she's envious because that would be green. No.
Maybe like scarlet, like because every fucking other woman whore that people don't like is named Scarlet.
That could be it.
Don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah. And I was actually at this moment that I paused my computer while I was taking notes, and I noticed and I encourage you to do this. Like, if you pause at this moment after Harriette says that line, you will see Rachel and her eyes are just like wide open, like googly eyed, like she has this horrified Disney villain look, like, what did you say? And it's the best thing ever. So try to find that moment and maybe you'll be entertained as well.
You've got to find it because I'm still trying to understand the insult, but Rachel's reaction to it makes it even better.
Yeah. I'm actually also confused by Rachel calling Harriette short stuff, because I would imagine that's a reference to height. And in this scene, at least, Rachel and Harriette seem to be practically the same height.
They do. They almost. Rachel's just a little taller, and that's one of those insults that you throw at somebody just because it's going to get under their skin.
Now, Mama Winslow, as we had mentioned, she puts her foot down. Finally, she's screaming at these two to stop arguing, and she's putting a motherly foot down to lecture them on how ashamed they should be to argue over this. Were you in love with this flowery white onesie-looking top that Mama Winslow was wearing? It was a look.
So, disclaimer for everybody listening, I personally hate all of Mama Winslow's looks. I don't think they've ever dressed her well. I don't think they've ever dressed her well.
There has to be like at least one season one look that you liked. Did you hate all of them?
Did you watch The Jetsons?
Briefly, when I was a kid, yeah.
You remember the robot Rosie, the maid?
Yeah.
That's what it looks like Mama Winslow's dressed like all the time to me. That she just looks like she's dressed in this like Rosie the maid outfit 24/7. And this one was just as ugly as the others.
Got it. That's a good reference. She's like a black human grandmother version of Rosie the maid from the Jetsons. I love that. I love that. I did laugh, though, when Mama Winslow told Harriette and Rachel that they were acting like chuckleheads. I've never heard that before. I've heard knuckleheads, but chuckleheads. Like, oh, they're laughy heads? Their heads just laugh a lot?
I was trying to figure that one out, too. I was like, chucklehead. I'm like, what's a chucklehead?
Your little ha-ha nose?
Okay, that would be a great dad insult.
You little funny... Hey, what are you doing there, funny titties? Like, that's just it's random.
It's very random.
Like, okay, my titties make you laugh? Like, what? How's that insulting? Well, I mean, I guess it would be insulting, but like, how's that going to make me angry and cry?
I can see somebody crying over that one.
That's true. Never mind. You want to have unfunny titties. You want to have serious looking titties. I apologize. Only call male nipples funny titties, because male nipples are always weird to look at.
What are they there for?
This is true. My wife has argued that that males should not have nipples because they're just absolutely useless, and I say no because society has conditioned me to see nipples on a man. So if I don't see nipples on a man, I'm gonna think like you're some fucking weird alien being from like a movie where you're like a Frankenstein monster or something.
I support nipple removal. I think if men had to have their nipples removed, they would understand a little bit better about what it could be to possibly be a woman. Nipple removal for all men, no anesthesia. That's my platform for president.
Okay, I guess it would reduce a lot of purple nurples, so that would be a reason to remove them.
There you go. See, we're doing a benefit.
There you go. So Laura is butting in next to Mama Winslow after that Chuckleheads comment with "Lay it on them, Grandma," and I thought it was random. To be honest with you, it just came out of nowhere. Especially when Rachel and Harriette were looking at her like, "Wait, what? Where did that come from?" And then Laura was just like, "Oh, sorry, I'm just getting emotional."
It was very random, very Tyler Perry moment where I was like, why did Laura say that?
Yeah. Mama Winslow, however, gives the standard parental lecture that something more important than a car is family and learning to be happy for one another when the other thrives. Harriet and Rachel do feel bad, and then they apologize to each other, and then, of course, proceed to fight about who is the nicest person that's going to give the other person the car. And then Mama Winslow tries to butt into the argument again and suggests that Harriet and Rachel sell the car and split the profit 50-50. Do you agree with that sentiment?
And unless I needed a car, if I win a car in a competition, I'm selling it because I don't want to have to pay taxes on it. So that would always be the right option to me whenever you win a car is sell it. And I'm happy they came to that. Like, let's sell the car and go spend some money.
I am all in favor of making money, but I think I revert back to the earlier scene when this B story was introduced, where I was like, guys, you just live in the same house as it is. Like maybe have your regular individual weekday cars, and then this red cabriolet could be like the special occasion kind of car that you both either drive together or you share. Like Rachel wants to get herself some man poon, and she gets the weekend car and goes out to wherever she goes out to. And if Harriet and Carl want to have married poon, then they go out. They go out to wherever married people get their poon, and they do.
I haven't heard poon in so long. Oh my God.
Can you tell I've been out of the game for a while? I'm just using old people phrases that I think are hip, and it's like, nope.
You are using my college lingo. You're just being vintage right now. That is it. Poon is okay to say.
God, it's the best. It is the best. Anyway, so whatever. This is America, and any opportunity to make money, we are all in favor of. So it's been decided. Harriet and Rachel, they're going to split the profits. Rachel is suggesting that they go to the mall to celebrate, and Harriet's just like, I'm right with you, honey. That's a great idea. Kumbaya. And then we just have Laura and Mama Winslow in the living room. Laura commending Mama Winslow for solving this argument. Mama Winslow is accepting the compliment and also imagining that it would be quite a relief for Carl to not have to deal with any more Harriet and Rachel drama. And then Mama Winslow assumes that Carl is happy wherever the fuck he is. And then we get what we've referenced, I think, only once before as an optical flip. This is something that Pod Meets World would reference that happens a lot in Boy Meets World, where, I don't know, imagine a scenario like, oh, I'm going to put my foot right on top of the blazing flames of this fireplace to warm it up. What could go wrong? And then you have like the scene physically optical flip. It flips around to what exactly would go wrong, which is like your foot being on fire.
Yes. They get better with their transitions in Family Matters very happily. I'm happy to say that. Because it was a good optical flip, but it was also where I was like, okay, we didn't really need that transition because we didn't get a transition like that at any other moment in the episode.
Well, it happened, and so Carl is obviously not happy wherever he is. He is freaking the fuck out. We see we see that stock image of the hot air balloon from a distance as we hear the screams of Carl. I will end our B story by saying that I have to admit Laura is my junk food for this episode because she was so underutilized, and for a character that becomes very central and very utilized as the show goes on. I mean, so far she's been utilized very well. We've seen so many things about her dynamic with Steve, and I just had questions about like how she just popped in for like 2 seconds in this scene to wear an exercise outfit that made no sense, that wasn't explained at all, and then to say 2 lines as an assist to Mama Winslow, and then that was it. I would argue that since she was being as underutilized as Judy, this could have worked just as well if Judy was in Laura's place instead of Laura herself. That's my opinion. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, honestly, and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to reference the next episode because it's so heavily focused on Laura being on camera so much. We could have had Judy do this. Judy would have been like a cuter little interjection to me as like, she's trying to avoid going to bed on time again. So what is she doing? She's downstairs in Harriette and Rachel's argument. Like Laura wasn't really needed. So I could see her as junk food. She's not my junk food.
What about if Little Richie took Laura's place?
Oh, that would have been heaven. That would have been like, okay, we can just stop the episode here, give Richie another line, or he could have said something like, oh, God says we have to share. And that would have summed up everything.
That would have been something. I would have, as much as I trashed on Little Richie, I would have loved to have seen Little Richie become sort of Mama Winslow's backup support cheerleader, and the whole Harriette Rachel drama. That would have been, that probably would have been a fun time.
It would have been a good time. Little Richie, we needed you here.
And so we wrapped up our B story, and now we go back to our A story going into scene 6. But anything else about our B story that you want to comment on?
No, this was a great B story. I like how it wrapped up nice and tight. We got like some good acting between both of the characters that we haven't had in a couple episodes. So it was good.
Okay. I feel differently about it. I'll talk about it in my delicious star rating. Mm-hmm. Hot Air Balloon Adventure Part 3. So we see Carl still holding on to the handle of the hot air balloon in fear. He, after that scream that we heard. And then Steve was just like, very good. Like your last scream was much shorter. Now look down again and make that look longer. And I just was wondering at that point, Steve, are we giving Carl like a conqueror of the fear of heights, or are we just giving him long-term PTSD?
Carl's got PTSD from this. This is a traumatic experience. My hat is off to Reginald in this acting of this scene.
Yeah.
Because I actually felt uncomfortable looking at my television. Like,
really?
Yeah, like his actual like fear of heights, his portrayal of that they're up so high. It's not like convincing where you're like, oh my God, they look like they're really in the clouds, because they're not. But his acting sells it so well that I found myself like actively not looking at my television screen because that would freak me out.
All right. Well, there you go. Reginald, props to you. And Carl faints. Again, we've seen it done before. He wakes up from it rather quickly, I would say. He doesn't prolong that fainting. And then he's telling Steve, like, get us down. And then you have to just love Steve's continuation of his idiotic optimism. Relax, Carl. When the air inside the balloon cools sufficiently, we'll begin to descend. Now, we don't know where or when, but those are the imponderables that make life interesting.
This would have actually calmed me down.
Really?
Yes, 100%. Like, eventually we're going to come down. That's all I need you to tell me.
All right. I would have I would have wanted to strangle Steve and then maybe accidentally bump into him to the point where he gets knocked off the hot air balloon and falls to the ground. Not saying it's murder, but it could be an accident.
It's only you and Jesus up there. Nobody knows what happened.
There you go. But I will say, I mean, Steve's making me laugh here. He has another dessert for me. He's fucking maniacal, and I'm here for it when Carl reasonably panics and wonders what is the noise that he's hearing. You just see Steve gleefully, like with the most childlike enthusiasm. He's just like, oh, neat, a 727's coming right at us.
That was hilarious. And then the stock footage of the plane.
Yeah, what about that stock footage? Wasn't that so convincing?
It was the realest stock footage I've ever seen. The plane was right on them.
Yeah, so entertaining. Steve is just so zen in the face of danger. It just made me laugh so much. And I mean, we hope that the plane won't run into them. Uh, but of course, forget about that. What's more important? Steve somehow seeing from hopefully many miles away, like he's not even in the inside of the plane. From a distance, I guess he could see like through the windows that they're serving chicken Kiev.
Steve has those sonic eyes. He's like, I know exactly what they have. Because if they were really that close, Carl and Steve would have been dead.
Right, right. Now, my theory is that Herb and Diane, they have done such an awful job as parents that somehow Steve has like this defense mechanism where he treats tragic situations very lightly, like he's doing right now. I don't know what do you think about that theory?
I can see that. He's kind of like, if I go back home, it's torture. So if I die here,
it's a little less worse. A little less worse than torture.
That's what he's got going on.
If I go back home, they'll serve me only anchovy paste. They'll lock me in a cage. So what's the worst that a 727 can do to me?
Right.
Ha, let's laugh it up. A plane is coming right toward us, Carl. Ha. So they don't get hit by the plane, thank God. The plane whooshes by them so heavily that the wind rocks the hot air balloon back and forth quite a bit. Steve could have held on a lot stronger than he did. He didn't need to tumble very badly outside of the balloon to the point where he's holding on to dear life because he could just fall to the ground. So Jaleel probably didn't do some convincing stage combat there. That's okay. It's Family Matters. We're not going to hold you up to a high standard. Steve. But what did you think? I mean, did you think it was very convincing to have Steve fall out of the hot air balloon as he did? Or did you think like, wait, no, this was some klutzy choreography here?
It was very klutzy choreography. I'm sorry, my throat just got super dry.
Oh, no.
It was super like clumsy because in a scenario like that, if you got a plane coming towards you and the basket is starting to rock, I would imagine the natural response would be to get down in the basket, not make yourself higher and then fall out.
Yeah. So Steve didn't have the correct instinct there, and for that he failed. But here we are. My theory is that since Steve saved Carl's life in Ice Station Winslow, now low key Steve is putting Carl to the test. Like, oh, big guy, I'm hanging out. I'm hanging by a thread outside this hot air balloon. What you gonna do? You gonna save me? Like I saved you from that fucking ice fishing pond?
I can see that. Steve is like, you better return the favor. Carl's like, should I really lift this kid up?
Now, thankfully, Carl does put on his cop rescue hat. He does. He takes the fear out of his brain and he just, boom, gets to work and finds a way to pull Steve back into the hot air balloon to the sound of, I don't know, genuine studio audience applause. I can't tell if it was stock or not, but I think there was some applause.
I think this one had some applause. It sounded like real applause.
Maybe you disagree. He felt like, as Carl and Steve were discussing what happened and maybe they're giving us some indication of a lesson. I thought it was the wrong kind of lesson. It just seemed to indicate to me that like, oh yeah, Carl conquered his fear of heights. He just needs to have these near-death situations all the time and his fear is gone, rather than like maybe basing it in more like day-to-day reality situations, like the chase on the rooftop, like things where it's, it could be baby step, baby step, baby step. But what did you think when Carl and Steve were just kind of like, whoa, I think my fear has been conquered because I saved your life on a hot air balloon 5,000 feet up in the air?
Yeah, it was like, guess what cured my trauma? More trauma. It was there's no good lesson here. Because when it wrapped up, I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Carl can still be afraid of heights. We didn't do anything here.
And what's a good example of him being afraid of heights? He's like, that moment where he was just like, oh, like he looked down and he was like, oh, maybe I've almost conquered it. So you can tell that even though like his fight or flight kicked in and he was able to rescue Steve like that, it's like, well, I don't think you can expect that to happen every day, big guy. I think that realistically you're going to come across again like stuff like a rooftop or climbing on a step ladder that's less than a foot from the ground on the living room. Like, you'll come across stuff like that. And if you could conquer stuff like that on a regular basis, then maybe we'll talk.
Baby steps, Carl. This is a journey, not a race.
There you go. And then we get the hot air balloon. Did you appreciate the this stock footage of the hot air balloon from a distance? It has like this romantic sunset view wrapped around it. And then Steve pulls out a Casablanca reference when he sentimentally tells Carl that this could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. And then Carl butts it. Don't push it, Steve.
It was a great little moment, but I do have to say, I was like, all I feel like is we're going to hear some weird romantic music play as this balloon is flying away in the stock footage. And I'm like, this is not the way I expected this to end.
And then Carl and Steve make out, and then everything will be okay. Because that's totally legal. Anyway. Anything else for this scene?
That is it for this scene. I'm happy it wraps up because I was very uncomfortable looking at the sky in that scene.
You thought Carl Winslow was going to die.
He was going to die. He was going to fall through the balloon and land in ice.
Spoiler alert, seasons 3 through 9 of Family Matters, no Carl Winslow. They try to survive without him. James Evans from Good Times style.
Can you imagine if they replaced Carl Winslow with like a white actor and they were like, this is Carl Winslow?
Who's the whitest man they could replace Carl Winslow with? Who's a really white person?
Alex Trebek.
Yeah. They hummed the tune from Jeopardy, and then season 3, oh, hey, look, the guy from Jeopardy just gave up his gig for Family Matters to be the patriarch of this very black family. Okay.
I don't. No one acknowledges it. Nobody acknowledges that Carl is now a white man. They're just like, oh, hey, Carl.
Yeah, just like they didn't acknowledge how the new Harriette looks nothing like the old Harriette.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what happened.
That's with his like 90s mustache and his 3-piece suits. Alex Trebek coming in. Hi, Harriette. How you doing?
I would love it.
That would be the best. Anyway, all right, we get into our final scene in the living room. Oh my God. I was thinking about you and I was wondering if you caught this. As we fade from the hot air balloon to Steve, Carl, Harriette, Mama Winslow, and Rachel in the living room, did you notice, it happened very quickly, so maybe you didn't notice, did you notice Jaleel with like a blank face expression staring off camera to what looked like, I think he was looking at the director, and it looked like he was waiting for his cue to start saying his lines?
Yes, I did notice that.
You did? Okay.
I did.
It was like, oh, here's an edit that we forgot to take out.
You can clearly see he's looking off stage and he waits for a cue. Because I rewound it a couple of times. I'm like, was he saying something? And I thought I missed something because the camera was focused on him. And I'm like, why are they looking at him and he's waiting for a cue?
Yeah. I just thought it was... And I think what's more interesting was seeing the difference between him and the adults. Because if you see the adults, like, they're already in character. They're just like in awestruck gaze looking at Steve. They're ready to go. Mm-hmm. But I think there was sort of that child actor inexperiencedness that hit Jaleel where he wasn't quite sure. He was just like, oh, are we starting yet? Oh, okay. Like he just had that vibe to it where he's just like, is it my turn now? Okay, here we go.
Hey! He did exactly that. He's like, I don't know if I'm ready to go. Okay, let's do it.
All right. Yeah, because I noticed like his posture was like a bit more casual, like maybe that's his own natural posture. And he was just waiting for that cue, and maybe it was the director's fault. Maybe they gave it to him a little too late. Maybe there was a miscommunication between the director and the camera guy. I don't know, but caught that quick moment there. That was funny. And then, of course, Steve and Carl, they compliment each other on the resolution of the hot air balloon drama. Steve commends Carl for conquering his fear, supposedly. And Carl commends Steve for helping him to get there. And then I love this line from Steve. He was like, oh, once I understood the physics of it, Carl, it was nothing. Once you live with my dad, you learn a lot about expanding gases.
A fart joke. So Herb and Diane are farting on Steve.
I mean, I don't know about Diane, but we certainly know that Herb's ass just expands and he lets out some nasty ass dad farts.
Well, I mean, you know what? At least they're interacting with their child. If he's around to fart, he's got to be around for something.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the Winslows react with another instance of, wow, Steve, TMI. And Harriet sarcastically is just like, yeah, thanks for sharing that. And then Steve was genuinely like, oh, yeah, you're welcome. And the adults are acting very tired and ready for bed because they're giving Steve the cue that they want him to get the fuck out of the house. And I love how, when Steve is just like, all right, well, it's time to go. And then the adults are just faking like, oh, really? Please stay. Come on, don't leave.
I have never done that before. Have you ever done that? So someone's like leaving your house, you're like, oh, you should stay longer, and you don't mean it.
No, because I would be afraid that they would take that literally and actually stay longer. We don't want that.
No, when I say it's time to go, it's time to go.
Yeah, exactly. I just leave it at that. It's like, all right, well, I got to go to work in the morning, so ta-ta.
You were much kinder to me. I'm like, get out.
You have made yourself very useful for 2 hours. Now leave.
Like, get out. I'm going to bed. You guys, I love you, but get out.
Yeah, thank you. You don't have to go home, but you have to get the hell out of here. Remember that old saying?
Oh, yes, I remember it well.
Yep. All right, so Steve says that his parents are getting cranky if he doesn't have dinner ready in time, and that adds to the child abuse. Wow, these grown-ass people making their child cook for them. What the fuck?
You better live to something.
Yeah. But let's talk about how Steve, because, Steve opens the door to leave the Winslow house, and then it's revealed that there's the hot air balloon that I guess he borrowed from the professional or bought it from. What? How did he get the hot air balloon?
It's grand larceny. Let's call it the crime it is. He stole that.
All right. I mean, Jimmy Phillips, he probably deserves it for just leaving Carl and Steve abandoned like that to go find his maps for the longest time.
Dude, this is Jimmy's fault. He just left them. But Steve crashed through the front of the Winslow's home. Because don't they have a porch?
They do.
So how was that basket that close to the front door? Steve destroyed part of their house, and they didn't get into that.
I'm pretty sure I did. I would not put it past him. I just found it very funny that Steve hot air ballooned himself when he lives right next fucking door. Like, what is this, a millisecond of a wasted ride? Like, what the fuck?
He's like, I'm getting my money out of the stolen vehicle.
I mean, how much gas, how much air, how much energy is being used for that 1 millisecond hot air balloon ride to next door?
It makes you wonder. Steve is wasteful.
Yeah. Well, Steve goes up into the air. The Winslows awkwardly wave to him as he says goodbye to him. And obviously they have those facial expressions that are just like, what the fuck is happening? Rachel and Mama Winslow, they politely smile to Steve. Carl looks at Harriette with that vibe of like, what has my life come to? Who is this kid?
He's like, he's gone. He's gone, Harriette. Wait until tomorrow.
Yeah. You have anything else for this ending scene?
That is it. This ending scene was a nice, clean wrap-up. Again, they did really good with that.
There you go. That's it for our Family Matters recap of Season 2, Episode 17, High Hopes. I'm curious to see what your delicious star rating is.
So my rating for this episode is a 1.
Oh,
nice and solid episode. It had some good points. It had some kind of lull points where I think the audience reactions they put in just really didn't stick out that well to me. Excuse me. Laura is my junk food. We didn't need Laura in this episode. That little interjection of her wasn't really worth it. The B story was fun, but I would have liked it more if maybe they had resolved the car in the first time we saw them in their argument. And then we got a story of them going on a shopping spree since they decided to sell the car. So that's just me being picky of something that I would prefer. The last thing that made it a 1 for me was that we didn't get little Richie or Judy. And for some reason, at the end of the episode, after Carl almost dies, none of the children are around. It's just Steve and the adults. So that seemed kind of random.
Now, I thought you liked Laura in this short moment that she was in the episode. You didn't like her anymore?
She had a cute moment.
Okay. All right. Well, I had good laughs throughout this episode. I'm going to give it a 2.7. Carl's poutiness in the beginning over his failed criminal chase set the tone just right. And then, of course, Urkel and Lieutenant Murdoch just took it home for me. Urkel's obliviousness on the terrible way he's trying to solve Carl's fear was very enjoyable to watch. But Murtaugh's stoic macho-ness that is very easy to laugh at because it's so absurd. It's wonderful. Like, give me more Murtaugh any day, and I will be as happy as after I'm done with a nice full meal. Yes. And I think what's keeping this episode from being a solid 3, the Harriette and Rachel B story, I was fine with it. I just thought it was meh. It just didn't do much for me. Again, Laura being underutilized like Judy, given the significant importance of Laura Winslow as we continue on the show, was strange. Hey, I mean, we definitely had a good use of Judy in... Oh, God, what's that episode where she had the really good B story that we recapped not too long ago? Sun? No. Was it Sun?
No, it's not Sun.
Ice Station Winslow.
Ice Station is the one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's as we're recording this on, well, it's now January 10th. It was January 9th, but we're recording this so late at night that it's now January 10th. Yeah, we recently came out with the Ice Station Winslow recap not too long ago. So, that was a good B story for Judy, and we had some commentary on social media that said so that was great. That's a high bar to reach, and, it would have been nice to give Judy something like this brief moment with Mama Winslow as she's trying to resolve the Harriette and Rachel drama, because, Judy is already used briefly enough as it is, and if Judy is going to be your brief use player, then use her in a situation like this. I thought it would have been something.
What up?
Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is it. Yeah, 2.7. I think all around a great episode. It entertained me quite a bit. Definitely worth a rewatch for the Urkel and Lieutenant Murtaugh moments. I am so happy that I watched such an episode. So thank you, Family Matters. And you are really prepping me for this next episode. Do you remember off the top of your head what it's called?
Oh, I think it's called The Party.
Oh, The Party was season 1, episode 16, but I know what you're talking about. It has party in it. I do remember that.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Wikipedia right now because we all know how reliable they are. Season 2. Our next episode is going to be Life of the Party.
Life of the Party. That's what it is.
Yes. Original air date, February 8th, 1991. That is episode 18 of season 2. So we'll see you guys then. In the meantime, please, listen, subscribe, follow, rate, watch, review, all the good stuff. The Delicious Recap, wherever you get podcasts. You can always send us questions, comments, concerns, commentary, whatever, to thedeliciousrecap@gmail.com. Follow us on the Instagram, the Threads, the TikTok, the Reddit, the Facebook. Just type in The Delicious Recap and you'll see us. Look for that photo of Urkel and the Living Single Cast and Fresh Prince and the Cream Savers, the Dunkaroos. That is us. If you want early access to episode recaps and interviews, that's what our Patreon is for. Patreon.com/delicious-recap. Just $5 a month. Patreon.com/delicious-recap. Andrew, tell everybody about your social media adventures and whatnot.
Please feel free to find me and follow me on TikTok. I'm Ajay Vandertunt. You can also find me on YouTube at Ajay Vandertunt. And what's the other one? Lemon8 at Ajay Vandertunt and Blue Sky. It's all the same. I am the only Vandertunt on all of these apps. So just be VANDERTUNT. That's all you got to do.
Blue Sky sounds like an illegal party drug from like the 80s.
It kind of feels like it is when you get on there because you're getting all the fun of social media that we have been deprived of for so long.
Yeah. I feel like I have to go to like Studio 54 in New York City and get a hit of Blue Sky so I can have a great night.
Yes, the Blue Sky is going to make you dance.
All right. You want to give us a little deliciousness ringing to sign us off?
Yes. You guys, this wrap episode. Oh, how am I going to say this?
No.
Okay, because I'm afraid of so many things. I have to think of the deliciousness in it. Carl was high in the sky like angel food cake, so let that deliciousness ring.